Hi there, Scott Hamilton, ROCKFILE, back with another podcast, kind of a review discussion of AC/DC's brand new album, Power Up. Did I pop that P on purpose? No, sorry about that. But anyway, there was something warm and welcoming in 2020, as crappy a year as it has been, to get a new AC/DC album that not only sounded like AC/DC, but was a great AC/DC album. Let me go back a bit. Growing up, I was into rock and roll early on. Absolutely love it. It's still to this day. Guitar, bass, drums, vocalist, maybe some keyboards. I'm thrilled. I want to see a group of guys or girls or whoever up on stage, giving it their all, sweating. That's just what rock and roll is about. Dirty, gritty, in your face, attitude. But I've just always loved rock. And yes, I love all the other genres of music as well. I played jazz and classical growing up. I like pop music. I like jazz. I like reggae. I like a lot of things, but rock and roll, and my nickname's ROCKFILE, so go figure. And how I got that nickname, as I've talked about in other podcasts, I used to read the album covers. I would get these albums and I would listen to them, and while listening to them, I read all the lyrics, but I also read all that other stuff on the side, who produced it, where they recorded it, all that kind of stuff. And over time, that stuff sticks in your head. No matter what your hobbies are, you can make them your career if you're lucky enough, I guess. So anyway, that knowledge was in my head from early age. I was studying FM radio and stations and singles and listening to American Top 40 every week. And so anyway, long story short, I was into music from an early age, and I was hanging out with older kids who got me into AC/DC. I was already into Yes and Rush and things that were more complicated than that. Didn't really understand AC/DC, what the attraction was at the time. I wasn't the biggest Stones fan at the time. Wasn't the biggest Beatles fan at the time. I was definitely more the Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, stuff that was difficult to play, technical, big Rush fan. So anyway, and AC/DC always kind of seemed simple to me. But 1980, right before Back in Black came out, I'm riding around with seniors at Stone Mountain in Georgia, outside of Atlanta, and that's what you do. You cruise around. We listen to cassette tapes way too loud. I'm in the back seat smoking my first pot and all that kind of stuff. And I heard these Bon Scott albums and just went, wow. I mean, I could even appreciate, even though this is not, it was great. He was amazing. And he had just passed away, and we were waiting on this Back in Black album to come out. So that's kind of when I got into AC/DC, right as things changed. And throughout my life, I'll be the first one to tell you that I prefer Bon Scott's era. I think they were young and hungry and growing each album and got better each album. And they peaked with Highway to Hell, and the next album would have been incredible, but Bon Scott passed away. And the band, not knowing what to do, the songs were already written, most of them. They were ready to record. Bon Scott passed away. They had to find another singer, and Brian Johnson entered, took it over. They made it kind of a tribute album to Bon Scott, and their career continued on unabated. And over the years, they continued to release albums that sound like AC/DC. That is the biggest compliment I can give to them. It was a negative back then. Gosh, all their albums sound the same. But in the music industry, most artists want to grow and change, and I appreciate that. It's why some of my favorite artists are releasing albums now that are nothing like their early albums, and that's interesting to me. I like following that journey. But on the flip side, there are some bands that should kind of maintain, and I don't mean just stop being creative, but you got a sound that works, you have a band that works, you have a vibe that works. Go forth and do that a lot and do it well. Rolling Stones have done that. And you can criticize them for not putting out new music, and I get it. Or even Metallica is becoming one of those bands that's kind of frozen their sound in time. They've tried some other things, good or bad, but now they play stadium shows for hundreds of thousands of people every year, and they're doing what they do. And every once in a while they'll release some new music. That last album from Metallica was actually really good. So AC/DC, after Back in Black, for those about the rock, the albums after that, Fly on the Wall, Flick of the Switch, some of those albums are just as forgettable as their titles. Some of the other albums, though, like The Razor's Edge, really good songs, and I was working in rock radio at the time, big hits too, big rock hits. Now, throughout their career, AC/DC has always been criticized. Simplistic, monotonous, deliberately lowbrow, sexist, misogynist, and all of these things are true, but that's what people love about them. I mean, there's some pretty, sexist type songs that women sing, and these songs get played in strip clubs. So don't tell me that, there's not appreciation for things. It's like, well, John Wick murders people, Deadpool murders people, but those are very fun movies to watch. I mean, we can have that kind of entertainment in our lives and understand it is what it is and not take offense to it, right? And AC/DC has been able to dance around that for their entire career. Back in Black sold 20 million albums. It's double diamond. Grand total, their albums, they've somewhere around 70 million albums sold. They're very, very popular. Back in Black, 5th best-selling album in the United States of all time. How huge is that? So when I pull out AC/DC, I go back to Let There Be Rock and that era pretty much. Highway to Hell is one of my all-time favorite, just straight-up rock albums. And AC/DC has said they are a straight-up rock and roll band, nothing added, nothing, that's what they've always said they are. Nothing more, nothing less, a rock and roll band. And they are. And Black Ice a few years ago I thought was a decent album. It's easy to listen to. It's good AC/DC music, but it didn't make it into my regular rotation where I pull it out every year and go, I really need to listen to this. But this new album, Power Up, best thing they have done. I will go back and say this is my favorite AC/DC album since Back in Black. I will listen to this after I pull that out, kind of thing. I really, really enjoyed this album. Now, that's not to say it's as good as Back in Black. It's not. But for an album this late in their career that came out at 2020 after they've lost some members, that Malcolm wrote a lot of the songs and it's dedicated to Malcolm. He passed away in 2017. That's what took him so long to get back to recording this album. And you know what the cool thing about pulling out the CD is? There's a booklet in there, and I pulled it out expecting to read the lyrics and stuff. It's pictures of the band performing. The entire booklet is pictures of the band at their age and such. I think that's great. I mean, all the songs are about 3.5 minutes long. Some of them are better than others, but they all fit. It's a cohesive album. It's a good, solid. I've listened to it a couple times this week to get ready for this podcast because I have stopped doing many music reviews because I can't put music into the reviews. They keep getting pulled on YouTube and Facebook, and I'm trying to figure out what I need to do because there are other people reviewing music that put music clips in it, and they don't get pulled. But they strip the music out, and then you listen to a whole bunch of silence. So when I get it approved that I can put music back into these music reviews, I will do more music reviews. So this is my first one in a while because I felt strongly about this. There are people out there that, put AC/DC, Back in Black was the last album they bought, or for those about to rock or whatever, and they don't really consider them a viable thing today. But I'm telling you, in 2020, at the end of 2020, this is exactly what we needed. And when I got a copy of the album, when I first Shot in the Dark, when I first heard that, I went, wow, this is it's like fresh air, even though it's still just an AC/DC song. It was like a breath of fresh air and everything else we've had this year. And then to get the whole album, wow. They released a second single, Demon Fire. That's my favorite song on the album. That really sounds like something that was left over from Malcolm's days. But a lot of these songs were written by Malcolm, and they still have the sexist titles like Money Shot, But AC/DC is what it is. And if you like it, you like them. And if you don't, you don't, But you can't fault them for their formula or what they do. Angus Young is a force of nature on stage. Again, I've told you that I come from a background of liking technical players, for everything from Jimi Hendrix to John Petrucci. I like the guys that my jaw hits the floor when I watch them play. I went to see every Rush tour from Moving Pictures on because watching those three guys play and put out that much sound is incredible. I've been in bands. I know how hard it is. I like really technical stuff because I'm a musician, and I like to know that there are people out there that can play things harder than what I can play, you know what I mean? And there are people I look up to and things like that. So AC/DC was never one of those bands, but now as an older dude, a dude that appreciates David Gilmour's long guitar notes and his tones to tell the story and such, I can really appreciate what Angus Young does on the guitar. His leads were always great, but some of these riffs that he and Malcolm and the rest of the band came up with are just, holy crap. You know, these are quintessential classic rock riffs made into classic rock songs that will stand the test of time. Now, again, this is not an album that's going to win a whole bunch of awards, or it's going to be your favorite album tomorrow. But if you have some AC/DC albums in your in your music library, you should have Power Up in there. It is a solid AC/DC album and one of the better rock releases of the year because it is exactly what it should be. Angus Young, Phil Rudd, Cliff Williams, Brian Johnson, and Stevie Young playing AC/DC songs, you know? I really like it. It's a great album. Demon Fire, Shot in the Dark, both great singles. You can hear them on my radio stations, but Realize and Rejection, the first two songs, really good. Through the Mist of Time, that was a little more than I expected, you know. And these are the mid-tempo songs. These are not the super fast AC/DC songs, but it's recorded really well. The drums sound good. The guitars sound good. The bass sounds good. The vocals, it just is one of those AC/DC albums that belongs in the collection, and I hope it sells well for them, and I can't wait for the tour. I will go see the tour next year if they do it, because regardless of how old they are, they still put on a great show, and the music is there, and they haven't just become that nostalgia act, not releasing new music. So without being able to play you some of the cuts or whatever, go on YouTube, check out some of the tracks or Spotify or whatever you use to audition music, or listen to Rockfile Radio Fire, where we've got Demon Fire in heavy rotation already. It is a great AC/DC song. They made a cool video for it too, all computer generated and everything. Very high tech looking for 2020 for a band like AC/DC, but none of this feels like a band that's putting on airs or trying to be something they're not. They're just trying to be a 2020 version of the same band that we've all loved for 40 years. I mean, they've been around almost 50 years. Whew. AC/DC Power Up. It is a great album. Pick it up. Go check it out. I really can't say enough great things about it. I'm going to go listen to it again because when you're in the mood for AC/DC, this will be one of those that you pull out, just like Powerage, just like, you know, it's almost that good. They've never been as raw as they were in the Bon Scott years from 74 to 80. But other than that, if you like the Brian Johnson era of AC/DC, this is there. It's great. Love it. AC/DC Power Up. It's going to make it into one of my favorite albums of the year, and I don't know that I've ever put an AC/DC album in any one of my year-end lists. My year-end lists are not best of because I'm not qualified. Yes, I think my tastes are qualified. I just don't have time to listen to everything out there. And a few years ago, I switched from doing the best of the year to the favorites of the year, because I basically have to tell you about the albums that I like the best that I actually heard. I did not hear everything. Matter of fact, I talked about this in another podcast. There is so much music coming out, I can't listen to everything. There are not enough hours in the day. On any given Friday, when record labels send me singles and albums to listen to for the next week for the radio stations, I get more than I can listen to in the weekend. You know, I might get 50 releases and there's only 50 hours in the weekend, that kind of thing. So I don't do best of lists, but I will do the best of what I saw and heard. So I'm working on that now. Matter of fact, December is my favorite time of the year, not for Christmas and all that kind of stuff. This is the time of year that I get to revisit all my favorite stuff of the year, my favorite movies, my favorite video games, and my favorite music. And again, this wouldn't make a best of list, but it definitely makes a favorite list, because this is an AC/DC album that's going to go in my collection and get pulled out every once in a while when I want to listen to AC/DC. Power Up, pick it up. You're not going to be disappointed. Trust me. And I think it's going to do well for them. That tour is going to rock. I'm Scott Hamilton. I'm Rockfile. Thanks for checking out this music review with no music. Hopefully we get that fixed in the near future here in 2021. I've got many more podcasts in the can, ready to go, recording them now, all that kind of stuff. So we'll be quite prolific going into the new year. I'm Scott Hamilton. Thank you very much. Check out therockfile.com, and thank you for listening.